Firstly, thank you all very much for attending. I'm very pleased to see so many familiar faces and to share hopefully some of my passion and how this all started. As probably a 6 or 7 year old walking around on my grandfather's farm in southeast Queensland, there was a very large piece of petrified wood. This is actually from another place, but this was almost identical to what I can recall seeing on my grandfather's farm. And it was quite puzzling as to how wood can become stone. So that was probably the catalyst at a very young age. Not long afterwards, that led to a little book about rocks and minerals. By this time I'm 10 or 11, I guess, and I've got a little cabinet and I'm putting in granite, basalt, no diamonds at this time, but I'd already started collecting probably at the age of 11, and on my weekends I used to spend time at the Queensland Museum in Brisbane, and they had a very good rock and mineral collection. It's actually a photo of probably around about the time, and I'd go in there on the weekends and the curators would actually allow me to pull out the drawers and look at all the rocks. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. A bit later on, as a teenager, I joined a lapidary club in Brisbane, and I started to learn a little bit about gems and polishing, so I was still looking at rocks. This led to a career in exploration geology. I've been quite fortunate to get paid to travel to a lot of different places on 7 continents and have fun. So exploration geology, if you want to have fun and get paid for it, that's for you. As part of my exploration experiences on some of the larger projects, and some of you people here have shared this with me, we used to have what was called a slab library. And that was whereby we'd collect all of our samples from the field and make a cut surface, and to store these in core boxes was a practical way to do it. And that allowed us the opportunity to, at the end of the day, discuss all the rocks and drink a few beers and continue to have fun. This works very well. Here's an example from South Korea, an epithermal project that Ivanhoe was involved with. And by doing this, you see so much more on a cut surface. You could look at the assays, look at the textures of the rocks, and then discuss further, how's the gold occurring. There's a lot of benefits to doing this. Over time, I used to keep some of these slabs, and I also had slabs from other places around the world. And this was my office in Thailand around 2000. And being in Thailand, it was very easy and quite cheap to have these teak sets of drawers made. And I had 27 of these cabinets, and each one of these had 50 drawers with cut pieces of ores from different projects, mines, prospects, and minerals. I had also glass cases with minerals, and this is pretty much what my office looked like around 2000. The ROM actually plotted up some of these locations. That's roughly what it looks like. So these samples came from all over. So as I started to mature, and by the time I hit 60, I had to think about what's going to happen to all these rocks, because unfortunately none of my family were going to suffer after I was gone. And so I was thinking about, okay, what can we do with all of these rocks, because I have to do something. And I thought, okay, maybe a museum or a university, and I did some homework. A number of institutions were interested, but I could see that the collection wouldn't be preserved as I would like. One of my good friends, whose name is Laurie Curtis, he came to visit me in Thailand. It would have been, 2011. He spent a few days with me, and specifically a few days looking at all the rocks. And he suggested perhaps that the University of Toronto and maybe the Royal Ontario Museum might be interested. So end of February, I came over to PDAC 2011. I met or was introduced to, Jack McQuad. He was a very famous geologist who ran a highly successful consulting company here, and he initiated some discussions with the ROM and the university, and the follow-up to that was, okay, the ROM was interested, let's go and have a look at the collection. They came to Thailand to appraise it, and after a few days, I think it was obvious that this was an asset that could be used for teaching and research. And my main concerns were that if the collection was to be moved, that it not be broken up and not be sold. So after the appraisal by the ROM people who came over to Thailand, spent several days looking at it, the decision was made, yes, we can do this, but we had to figure out how to get the collection to Toronto. And to Kim's credit, basically said, okay, we definitely can put something together here. However, it has to be curated in a proper manner, and therefore that will need proper funding. After a couple of years and hard work from the people at the ROM, we finally had some people step up to the plate, and particularly Yamana Gold and BMO. So they put up the funding to make all this work. With the funds in place, we could press the go button, and Kim and the team came over again to Thailand to pack up the collection. This took quite some time. I think it was perhaps 10 days or more with a lot of people involved. And what I had done with all the rocks, they came out of the drawers, and all those blue crates are actually fish crates. And it was very practical because you could stack all of these crates one on top of the other, and it was a perfect way not only to pack the rocks, but to stack them in containers for shipping. Another thing that had to be done was to itemize all of the rocks. And this was no mean feat either, because there was plus 20,000 of these samples, and they had to be put onto an Excel sheet with Catherine and Brent, who worked 12-hour days for 10 days to put all this together. This is an example of one of those spreadsheets. These are the deposits in Bulgaria that were samples from. It's on a spreadsheet, and all the different categories were put according to country. And this actually was a huge job, but it was done with time, and it was done very, very well. This particular photo here is the last tray. So after 980 trays of labeling, packing, etc., all into a container, like so. That container was almost completely full. Perhaps another 6 or 7 trays might have fitted in it. And once again, Ian did a fantastic job. Off it goes to Canada. It went out at night simply because of traffic and ease to get to the port from where the rocks were. Arrived here at the ROM 8 months later, the big moment to open the container. Nothing had moved and everything was perfectly in place. So this was extremely well done. Now to unpack them all. So a number of volunteers and I think students also, Kim, were arranged, and it was a win-win because they got to look at all these great rocks, and at the same time we had volunteers to unpack it all and eventually find its way into the storage cabinets. One of the interesting pieces that I had was a large collection of topaz crystals from Myanmar, which I gathered while I was working there. This particular one is a 25 kilogram topaz crystal, but I had other crystals that were this kind of size, and Catherine looked at these and thought some of these might be gem quality. So one of them was sent off to Germany and it was cut, and it turned out to be a beautiful 500 carat topaz crystal, and that's on display upstairs, I believe. I continued to collect. I tried therapy, that hasn't worked. So this is a second collection that's now here, actually. That was shipped a couple of years ago, and that's now all here and currently being processed and labelled. Some nice additions. And to the curation facilities themselves, as you're going to see shortly, this is where all of the main minerals are housed here in the ROM. Beautiful state-of-the-art cabinets. excellent creation facilities and very easy to access. Where we're sitting is a classroom where we hold annual workshops in conjunction with the SEG, and the concept is that we have the classroom here right next to where all the rocks are stored, and it's very easy to arrange practical workshops with people looking at rocks. This is where most of the ores are stored. These are the rocks from mines and prospects, all extremely well labelled and all accessible. So here's the main objectives for all of the rocks here. Short courses, we've successfully had some of these. There's access for university teaching, student research, continuing education and basic industry training. The first workshop, which was held 2 years ago, was held right here, and that went extremely well. A lot of people showed interest in this, and the basic concept, as I said, was we have the classroom here, and then at the same time 50% is lectures and another 50% is actually looking at the rocks. And this is something I think is really critical because there's no substitute for actually looking at the rocks. So there's lectures, rocks, lectures, rocks, lectures, rocks, and that seems to be working very well. Last year we had a presentation from Bill Chavez, and he talked about the importance of gossans. That went down extremely well also. And these are some of the participants at that course. We designed the courses so that there's a large student component, which is a good mix because we have students, early career professionals and senior people all around the table discussing rocks. And finally, tomorrow we have the VMS course, which Bruce is going to give. That's fully sold out as well.